This biblical docuseries is brought to you completely free, thanks to the generous support of our Patreon sponsors. If you believe in this kind of content and you would like to see more authentic biblical content from Israel, I would encourage you to join our many patrons who are already supporting this project over on Patreon and support this project at any level that's comfortable to you. And in exchange, we will give you early access to the episodes when they come out, plus some live meetups and other perks for our generous sponsors. God bless you and shalom. The tomb of Abraham.
Is this the actual tomb? Is this where he's buried? Buried?
This is the actual tomb of Abraham. It's recorded in the Bible that Abraham was buried in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. And this is the tomb marker, the actual tomb with the bones of Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebecca and Jacob and Leah is way down beneath the floor here in the corner of the building. We'll see it later. I mean, we won't see the cave, but I'll tell you more about where it is. Abraham is the one that established the people of Israel. Abraham was born in a place called Ur Kasdim, and he migrated to a place called Haran in southern Turkey. And then when he was 75 years old, the voice of God spoke to him saying, Lech lecha me'artzecha, go out from your land, from your birthplace, from the house of your father, to the land that I will show you. And you will be a great people, and you will be blessed. Abraham journeyed, and he followed the voice of God. He came to the land of Israel, and he first stopped in a place called Shechem, and built an altar there. And then he continued south to a place called Bethel, and he worshiped God there. And then he had to go all the way down to Egypt for a period of time. And then he came back into the land, but ultimately he set up his home in the city of Hebron here, and he lived here for a good part of his life. And after a while, he also lived in Beersheba and some other places, Gerar.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he saw this as his home city. And when the time came for his wife passed away, and the time came for her to be buried, he chose this place for his wife's burial place. And because of that, ultimately, he was buried here. And because of that, his son and grandson and their wives were buried here in Hebron. Isaac and Rebecca are also buried here, and their tombstones are in the building. But since the Tomb of the Patriarchs was liberated in 1967 in the Six-Day War, there's an arrangement between the Jews and the Muslims that the Jews have access to half of the building and the Muslims have access to the other half of the building. And the tomb of Isaac and Rebecca is in the half that the Muslims have control of. As part of the arrangement, there's 10 days a year when the entire place is accessible only to Jews, and there's 10 days a year when the entire place is accessible only to Muslims. And today is not one of those days. We're standing in a city that in English it's called Hebron, and in Hebrew it's called Hebron. And the word Hebron, it comes from a few different root words in Hebrew. It has at least two connotations. One connotation is it could be connected to the word chaver. What's chaver mean?
Friend.
Friend, like Abraham, the friend of God, the companion of God. Actually, the Arabs, based on that, call Hebron Al-Halil, which means the friend, because they call Abraham also the companion or the friend of God. But there's another meaning to the word Hebron. It can come from the word chibur.
Connection.
Chibur is connection, because here is our connection to the land of Israel. The people of Israel have our connection here because this is the first property that was ever purchased in the land of Israel. Here, Abraham purchased this location where we're standing, the tomb of Machpelah, to bury his wife Sarah and ultimately all the family. And in this way, he established our connection. And here, Our roots are in the ground because our ancestors, going back almost 3,800 years, are buried here in the ground.
Incredible to be in this, to be able to be here right now and experience this.
Every time I come here, it's very moving. I remember the first time I ever came here, I was maybe 19, 20 years old. I was studying in yeshiva, and I walked into this place, and I felt like a child who was adopted and grew up somewhere else and came to their real parents, their birth parents' house for the first time.
Yeah.
I can't describe it.
Every time I'm here, I feel like, I don't know how to explain, like fresh air. It might be like just like spiritually.
It's funny you say that because they say that here is the opening to the Garden of Eden. And on the other side of the complex that's off limits to us, which today is a mosque, and it's only open to Jews 10 days a year, and there's a grate in the floor that goes to the cave underneath the building, and there's air that blows out from that hole, and people line up to put their face because there's a sweet smelling air that comes out of that hole, and the legend is that that is the air of the Garden of Eden coming out of the hole. Behind this corner, underneath the basement of the building, is the original cave. And there have been people who have gone down into that cave at different times in history. That's for another episode. The story of that, it's a long story. But we know that the cave is in this corner. And for that reason, till today, there are people who they come and they pray outside the wall and this place to be as close to the actual cave as possible.
So we can't go in the cave today?
Today, we can't go in the cave.
All right.
And another reason why people pray here is just out of tradition, because for over 1,000 years that the Muslims were controlling this tomb, they didn't allow non-Muslims inside. Only Muslims were allowed inside for most of the time they were here. So there was an arrangement that Jews could pray here outside this corner. Now, at the time of that arrangement, it wasn't known exactly that the cave is behind this corner. But Jews came and prayed here for all of those hundreds of years. And they really want to go inside because it's like that's where the real thing is. But they were stuck praying out here. So they got as close as they could. But today we actually know that when you pray here, you're closer to the tomb.
It seems like a theme of just, I guess, spiritually we gravitate to certain spots. And then later on it's revealed, oh, that spot was actually...
Yeah, God arranges it for those people who are truly trying to serve Him. He arranges for them the best things, whether they understand it or not. This is a 4,000-year-old wall, which is the wall of the ancient city of Hebron. When Abraham came here 4,000 years ago, he would have seen this wall standing at its full height, and inside the wall would have been the city of Hebron.
Wow.
And here in Hebron, you had people like Ephron the Hittite, and Aner, and Eshkol, and others who were the head honchos of the city, the dignitaries, who were Abraham's friends. And he would come in and out the gate of the city. And you see right here, there's a staircase going up.
Yeah.
This is the original staircase that went up to the gate of the city. Now, if they would excavate past here in the area beyond where the cars are, maybe they would find the gate of the city of Hebron. But we're assuming it's at the end of the staircase. So these are stairs that Abraham himself may have even walked up when he came to Hebron.
Wow.
And you can imagine him coming here with his wife and his concubine Hagar and his son Ishmael, okay? And you can imagine him going up these stairs and entering the gate of the city and talking to the local dignitaries and explaining to them that I'm originally from Ur Kasdim and from Haran, and that God told me to come to this land, and I've been traveling through the land, and I've been in Shechem, and I've been in Beit El, and then I went down to Egypt, and now I would like to set up camp outside your city. And the dignitaries of the city probably told him, okay, you're welcome here. You're a holy man of God. You're a blessing for us. Please feel free. And there was a man in the city named Mamre who had an orchard or a field or something with oak trees just outside the city in a place called Elonei Mamrei, which means the oaks of Mamre. And that man, Mamre, allowed Abraham to set up camp in that field with the oak trees, just on a hilltop, some distance from here. Now we can't see it from here, but soon we're going to go to the roof of the building and we'll be able to see where is the place that Abraham set up camp.
I think it's very interesting that certain things don't change and steps are exactly the same way. It's just
Steps are steps.
Steps are steps.
It's like the wheel. It's
yeah. If it's not broke, don't fix it. It's like
it just works, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have escalators today.
You know.
So you see, we're standing here in a very small Jewish neighborhood. When we drove in here, we drove through a lot of Arab shops and homes, and all around here, this home is Arab. All the homes in every direction are Arab, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 mobile homes of Jews, and we have here an apartment building of Jews in an area of Hebron completely surrounded by Arabs. And the story of this place is, after the Jews returned to Hebron, after the liberation of Judea and Samaria in the Six-Day War in 1967, one of the places the Jews were able to return to eventually was this little piece of land, because there were Jewish people who had the deed to this property going back hundreds of years. This was a Jewish property. So they, with a lot of struggle with the government, they were able to move here and live in mobile homes. And they lived here like that for a couple of decades, until archaeologists from the Antiquities Authority came to them in the 90s and said, we have reason to believe that this hilltop where you guys are set up is the archaeological site of the city of Hebron. Everyone knows where the tomb of the Patriarchs is, but that was outside the city. That was in a field outside the city. But we have reason to believe that this is the area of the city itself. And we want to excavate up here, but there's very few places where we can excavate because the whole hill is covered with Arab houses and they're not going to let us excavate. But you guys live in mobile homes, so maybe we can move your homes away for a few years and then we'll excavate. And if we don't find anything, we'll move you back. And if we do, then, we'll find a different place for you. So the Jewish settlers who lived here basically responded by saying, that's very nice. We would love to also know what's here, but we know how it works with the government, that if we...
Once you move out, they're not...
Yeah, if we move out of here, we'll have the fight to get back will be very difficult, and we may never be able to get back. And to them, it was very important to hold on to every inch of the land of Israel on behalf of the Jewish people. That was their main agenda. So they came to a sort of compromise. The compromise was they built these I-beam structures for the mobile homes, and they took a few mobile homes that were over here
and stacked them.
Wow. You've never seen before stacked mobile homes, right? No. It's a lot of money to do such a thing, and it normally wouldn't be worth it. But in this case, it was part of a whole negotiation. So they stacked them here, and then they excavated here. And of course, imagine how amazing it was when they found that these are the steps that Abraham walked up. Wow. And this is the wall of the city of Hebron. That means, for example, when Abraham negotiated the purchase of the tomb of Machpelah, the tomb of the Patriarchs, standing at the gate of the city of Hebron, he stood right over there.
Yeah.
So that means that the Jewish people who live here, these few families, all of those years that they were holding on to this place with their fingernails against the government, against the international community that's always pushing for the settlers to go somewhere else. And to their point of view, they were just holding on to another few inches of the Holy Land. But little did they know that it wasn't just any few inches. The place they were holding on to with so much self-sacrifice was a place where Abraham walked right through here. He walked right under where these homes are.
It shows like the resolve of the Jewish spirit. Like, I don't know why I'm going to hold on to this, but I have to hold on to it.
And you should know, every family here can tell stories of years when they would be sitting at their Shabbat table and a bullet would come through their window or a rock. I mean, it wasn't just
government
that they were being stubborn. They were really ready to give their life to hold on to this place. just because it was another part of the land of Israel and they didn't want to relinquish it.
That must be an amazing feeling to when you actually find out that this is where Abraham was and where this major monumental point in our history, that satisfaction of I was here for a reason. Oh, I can only imagine what that felt like.
And today, because of this discovery, it used to be that this was a place that was visited by very few people. Now every tour group that's interested in the Tanakh comes up here to see the wall of the city and to tell this story. So now every day they're getting many visitors and people from all over the world coming here as well. You see that?
That's the Mamre.
Built by King Herod about 2,000 years ago. But when Abraham was here, we're talking about 3,700 years ago, he would have been looking out over hilltops and fields. I want you to use your mind to erase all of the buildings, even the building of the tomb complex. And just imagine that down in the valley are fields with wheat and grain growing, vegetable gardens. Up on the mountains, on the slopes are terraces with grapevines and olive trees and fruit trees, right? That's the view that Abraham would have had. So imagine Abraham standing right here. He would have been actually a few hundred feet in that direction, but having this view and negotiating with Ephron the Hittite, saying, I want that cave with that field. That's what I want to buy.
Abraham rose up from the presence of his dead and spoke to the children of Heth, saying, I am an alien and a resident among you. Grant me an estate for a burial site with you, that I may bury my dead from before me. It's right there. Why exactly this hill and this cave, and like what's so special about it?
It's a very good question, because we see that he goes to great lengths to get exactly this one, right?
He keeps like, whatever the price was, he's just like, I need it.
Right,
I need it.
and he ended up paying an exorbitant amount for that particular cave and field.
Abraham bowed down before the members of the council. He spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the members of the council, saying, Rather, if only you would heed me, I give the price of the field. Accept it for me, that I may bury my dead there.
You know, the rabbis in the Midrash, they ask this question, and they say, why that one? They say, one day, it's an amazing story. They say, one day Abraham was herding his herd of goats and sheep in this valley, and he passed by a certain cave, and one of the sheep went in, and he went out in to look for it, and he smelled a sweet smell coming out of the cave. So he went in deeper and deeper, following the smell, and he found that in this cave was the burial of Adam and Eve.
Okay.
So even though the Tanakh doesn't mention where is the burial of Adam and Eve, we Jews have a tradition that Adam and Eve are also buried in what later became the tomb of the Patriarchs. And when Abraham realized that this is the tomb where Adam and Eve are buried, he decided with a strong resolution that he's going to acquire this place as his family burial portion.
When you're outside of Israel, it's always over there. And when you come back home, you buy a ticket and it's right over there. Not over there, it's right there. And this is one of my main points of telling people of like, when you come here, everything's more real. Your connection is more intense. The senses are more potent. Your spiritual connection reaches a level that you can't get anywhere else.
When you look down, you see all of the Arab-controlled part of Hebron, which is more than 90% of Hebron today, which is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. You hear all the cars?
Yeah.
It's like Manhattan down there.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of hustle and bustle. Look at all the taxi cabs, the shops, the people lined up in the streets. The reason that I brought you up 4 flights of stairs to the top of this roof of this apartment building is because I told you that Abraham came to the city of Hebron, and then he didn't set up his camp inside the city. He actually set it up on a hilltop outside the city. We're actually in the area of the ancient city of Hebron, but Abraham set up his tent in a place called Elonei Mamrei, which is sometimes translated as the plains of Mamre or the oaks of Mamre, and it was on a hilltop outside the city. The problem is, I would love to take you to that site. We know where that site is. I would love to take you there, but today it's in the area controlled by the Palestinian Authority and it's off limit to Israelis. But from this rooftop, we can see the site. If you look up this way, you see a building with a crane on top.
I do.
And if you look to the left of it, you see a green hilltop with a lot of trees and some mansion on top, right?
I do.
That hilltop is the hilltop of Elonei Mamrei. And there is actually an ancient Byzantine church
I see it.
there on top of the hill, which marks the site, the traditional site where Abraham had his tent pitched in Elonei Mamrei. So when you stand here, you can understand. The city of Hebron was here, where we're standing, and across the valley was the hilltop where Abraham had his tent pitched. That's where he lived with his wife Sarah. That's where he lived with his concubine Hagar, and with their son Ishmael. And Abraham, of course, had a promise from God that he's going to have a son from his wife, Sarah. And while he's living there in his tent in Elonei Mamrei on that hilltop, that's when all of a sudden, on the 3rd day after he had circumcised himself, at the age of 99 years old, at God's order, on the 3rd day, 3 men appeared to him in the distance. And Abraham is sitting at the opening of his tent. Even though he's suffering, he's in pain. The 3rd day after a procedure like that is the most painful time, actually. But Abraham's greatest joy in life was hosting guests and wayfarers. So he's sitting at the opening of the tent, hoping maybe someone will pass by that he can give some food and some water. And he sees these 3 men approaching him. They were actually angels, but he didn't necessarily know that. And he runs to greet them and makes them food and water and everything. And the Torah tells us all the details of the type of food he prepared for them. And these men say to Abraham, "We have news for you. A year from now, your wife Sarah is going to give birth." And Sarah is sitting in the tent preparing the food, and she's listening to who are these men? What did they come here for?
Yeah.
And she laughs. And of course, she's chastised. Why did she laugh?
Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was frightened. But he said, "No, you laughed indeed." So the man got up from there and gazed down toward Sodom, while Abraham walked with them to escort them.
Ultimately, she ends up naming her son Yitzchak, which means laughter, because she says, God made for me laughter. That at this ripe old age, she was 90 years old, she gave birth while Abraham was 99 years old. So that story happened right over here on the hilltop of Elonei Mamrei. So Abraham leaves with his 2 guests, the 2 remaining angels, and he starts to escort them down on their way to Sodom. It doesn't say this, but you could imagine Abraham saying to his guests, "It was so nice that you visited. Where are you going to next?" And them saying to him, "Oh, we're going down to Sodom."
Oh, Sodom.
Maybe they claimed to have some business there, which they did have some business there. And you can imagine everyone saying, "Oh, Sodom,
My cousin, my
relative Lot lives there in Sodom. Let me show you the way. Let me show you the way." And so Abraham escorts these 2 guests, which I don't know if he knew, I think he didn't know that they're angels. He escorts them to this ridge. And we're going to talk more about how we know this is the ridge, but This is the first area when you come east from Hebron where you can see down all the way to the direction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so he escorts them to here, and you could just imagine him saying to them, okay, you see,
that big hill over there? Yeah.
Yeah, walk through that ravine, and then when you get there, turn right, and then
Boom.
just past the horizon, you're going to already see the city of Sodom. And when you get there, ask for Lot, and he'll take care of you. So you could just imagine that going on. And Abraham is about to pick up and go back. It's a walk of maybe 2 to 3 hours from here back to Hebron. And all of a sudden, God says, how can I keep what I'm about to do from Abraham? Now, of course, God all along planned to send these two angels to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. The rabbis in the Talmud tell us one was sent to destroy and one was sent to save Lot and his family. So Lot was going to be saved in any case. But what just happened here is that God sort of brought Abraham in as an accomplice on his plan to wipe out Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham is helping and going above and beyond to help with this plan, and he even shows the angels the way. And now Abraham is like an accomplice in it. And so you can imagine God saying, well, now that he's an accomplice, I have to bring him in on the plan. I can't do it and then he finds out from someone else.
Give him the ability to at least reject.
Right. Now, it's not like God is going to change his mind. I don't think he would change his mind. The decree is already there. But he wants Abraham to feel like he had a say in it, like he had the opportunity at least to say his opinion. So while Abraham is standing here, God tells Abraham, listen, I have to tell you, the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is very great. The cry of the sin has reached me in heaven, and I've decided to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the 5 cities of the plain. And Abraham, of course, Abraham is a man of kindness. We always see Abraham welcoming guests, doing kindness. And this is very difficult for Abraham to accept, that God is going to destroy 5 cities with thousands of people. And so, of course, Abraham does something which is really unbelievable, something which is very unusual, which is he pushes back against God. This building behind us is about 1,000, almost 400 years old. 1,300 years old, 1,400 years old. It goes all the way back to the earliest days of Islam. In fact, it's so old that if you look above the door, you see there's an inscription.
Yeah.
That's an original inscription. And that inscription is written in a kind of Arabic that Arabs haven't used now for well over 1,000 years. It's called Kufic. It doesn't have any vowel signs or any kind of like indications. Mm-hmm. And most Arabs today, they read it and they don't know what to do with it because it's such an archaic form. So this is part of how we know that, together with the analysis of scholars, that this building is very old. It goes to the first days of the Islamic religion after the Muslims came to the land of Israel. This is one of the first buildings they built in the land of Israel, like in the first generation, let's say, of Muslims in the land. And what is this building about? They built this building to commemorate 2 things. One is Abraham and the other is Lot. Okay, it's dedicated, the inscription says it's dedicated to Lot, but the local tradition also further says that this is where Abraham argued with God.
I see 2 footprints.
2 footprints.
Point in that direction where that part of the wall that's dug in.
So the Muslim tradition says that these are the footprints of Abraham, where he stood here and argued with God. Now, do I believe that these are actually Abraham's footprints? I don't know. What do you think?
Probably not, unless he's wearing a chisel and a hammer on his feet.
Maybe he had a chisel and hammer. No, I think that this is something that when they built this building, they came here, and at that time, there were still a lot of Jews living in this part of the country. Actually, this area around Hebron was full of Jews when the Muslims first arrived here 1,400 years ago. And the Jews told them that this is the area where Abraham stood and argued with God. So I believe that they probably carved these 2 footprints to mark the spot, to symbolize the spot, and built this building over it to commemorate it. Now, of course, when a Muslim wants to mark the spot of Abraham's footprints, they can do it facing Mecca and make the mihrab, which is the prayer niche, facing Mecca. I don't think that Abraham necessarily stood right here, but I think it's very possible that this hilltop is the place where Abraham argued with God.
Yeah. If you understand the magnitude, or even try to grasp how great God is and who are we, and yet still there's that freedom of voicing your own opinion, of saying, well, I disagree. But the fact that God gives you that option is quite fascinating.
Yeah, and this is actually something throughout the Hebrew Bible, throughout the Tanakh, which to me really sticks out, is that God is in a relationship with the people of Israel. It's not just, yes, we are his servants. It even says, for the children of Israel are servants to me. We're his servants, but we're also his children. And we're also sort of like his spouse. He relates to us on all of these levels. And so, yes, we have to follow him with the simple obedience of a servant. But he doesn't see us just that way. He wants us to say our opinion. And he wants us to be his partners in what he does. And here he wants Abraham. I don't know if he wants Abraham to be a partner in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, but Abraham is already his partner. Abraham already escorted the angels.
Yeah.
Showed them the way, and now he has to fill him in on what's going on. And so Abraham says to God, God, you're the righteous judge of the whole world. How can you do that? This is collective punishment. How can you do collective punishment against thousands of people? What if there's 50 righteous people? Would you not save the city for the sake of 50 righteous people? And God says to him, if there's 50, I won't destroy the city. But sort of between the lines, God's saying, but there's not.
But there's not, yeah. He further continued to speak to him, and he said, what if 40 would be found there? And he said, I will not act on the account of the 40. And he said, let not my Lord be annoyed, and I will speak. What if 30 would be found there?
What if there's 40? What if there's 30? What if there's 20? It goes down to 10.
Sure.
God says, if there's 40, I won't. Abraham says, what if there's 10? God says, if there's 10, I won't destroy the city. And Abraham understands. He understands that God is right. This place is completely and utterly corrupt, and it has to be destroyed. And Abraham goes on his way back to Hebron. So he walks the 2 to 3 hours back. Ephraim, I want to read to you the text that it says on the inscription up there. A few years ago, I took a picture of this text and I sent it to my friend Nada from Egypt, who's a scholar of Islam and history. And he said he can't read it because it's in Kufic, but he was able, using the text, to find a document somewhere that says what is written there. And he sent it to me, and it's fascinating. It says like this: the Muslim scholar Abdullah bin Muhammad declared, the hills, the plains, the buildings, the paths, the gardens, the trees, and the passage that transverses it are an endowment for the prophet Lot, the son of Haran, brother of Abraham, the friend of the compassionate Allah. May the blessings of Allah be upon them. So you can see from this inscription that when they built this building, it was connected to Lot, who is called the brother, or in other words, the relative of Abraham. Now the question is, what does this place have to do with Lot? Till today, if somebody wants to say that a place is evil, they might say it's like Sodom and Gomorrah, right? It was obviously a place which was utterly corrupt. Now, the question is, what was the corruption that was going on there? The Bible doesn't tell us explicitly what was the corruption. I mean, we see a little sense of it when the angels are in the house and the people of Sodom see these two men, they think they're men, and they say, bring them out that we can know them, which know them, we know what that's hinting to. So obviously that was a sort of degradation that was going on there, which they wanted to commit sexual violence and violence in general. But it was much more than that. The rabbis in the Talmud say that in Sodom, the real sin of the people of Sodom was, it was a very wealthy place. They had everything they could possibly need. The Bible says it was like the garden of God, like the land of Egypt. In other words, well-watered, lacking nothing. And because they had it so good, it was like a closed, gated community where strangers were not welcome. They would not give any hospitality to anybody. And on the rare occasion when somebody would come in and somebody would find themselves there, they would be treated in a way that they have to conform 100% to the society there, and anyone who didn't conform in the slightest bit was
taken care of.
Yeah, was persecuted. And so actually when the angels come to Lot and he invites them into his house, this is like a very unusual act that the people say, what are you hosting guests for? So think about it. What did Lot do after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah?
He ran away.
He ran away, right, with his wife and with his two daughters. And of course his wife didn't obey the command
not to look back.
Not to look back. And she looked back and regretted it probably, right? She turned into a pillar of salt. But Lot and his daughters continued and they ran up to the mountains. And in the mountains they hid in a cave. And of course we know that some bad business went down in that cave with Lot and his daughters. We won't get into it. If you've read the story, you know. And Lot ends up fathering two sons from his daughters who become the progenitors of two nations in the Bible, the nation of Ammon and the nation of Moab, right?
Yeah.
So where did that happen? Where is that cave where that happened? Perhaps, maybe they thought it's in this area also. Maybe that's why they dedicated it to Lot. Or perhaps the reason they dedicated it to Lot is because this is all part of the story of Lot being saved, right? You know, to us Jews, Lot is sort of a negative character. He's sort of, you know, a character who's not willing to follow completely God's plan, like Abraham does. But in the Islamic religion, Lot is seen as a prophet. You see in that inscription, it says the prophet Lot. So they see him as a holy man, as a prophet. And so they would build a shrine to a story that's connected to him.
Yeah. Why did he deserve to be saved versus all the other people?
It's a very good question. I don't know if we know the answer for sure, but I think first and foremost, when all is said and done, he was a relative of Abraham. And he had the faith to go with Abraham on the journey to the Holy Land, even though they didn't know where they're going. So he had the merit of that faith that he followed Abraham. Even though it's true that when push came to shove, after they went through different hardships, Lot decided to exclude himself and to go to Sodom and Gomorrah instead of staying with Abraham. But, you know, it's not all or nothing. God doesn't judge the world as all or nothing. Furthermore, when the angels got to Sodom and Gomorrah, even though the people of Sodom were very evil and nobody welcomed the angels in, Lot saw them, invited them in as guests, fed them, gave them hospitality. So we see that Lot, even after he separated himself from Abraham, he maintained at least aspects of the way of Abraham, the hospitality, the kindness, Not to the same degree, but he had merit to be saved. So after Abraham finished arguing with God, he got up and he walked in this direction back to his home in Elonei Mamrei, just outside of Hebron. Ephraim, look this way.
Yeah.
We can see Hebron from here.
Real close by.
Yeah, you could imagine the walk, right? It's a nice day. We could do it today. I don't know if we would make it alive in the current situation, surrounded by all of these hostile villages, but
We might get harmed by a different type of heat.
yeah, we might take some different heat.
Different heat.
But if we were in a time of peace and calm, I would say let's walk it. It's a 2-hour walk, and we would be able to walk the exact
Route.
walk that Abraham walked back and forth. So now towards the end of his life, Abraham and Sarah, they move back here to Hebron. Here they have old friends like Mamre and Eshkol and Ephron and all these people who they've known as long as they've been in the land of Israel. They're getting older. Their kids are grown up and out of the house. So they move back to where they're comfortable. And comes the day when Sarah passes away. She's 127 years old.
Sarah's lifetime was 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. The years of Sarah's life. Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to eulogize Sarah and to weep for her.
Abraham now has a problem. He needs to bury her. So he goes to the gate of the city, and he would have had this view, like I told you before. And he negotiates with Ephron the Hittite to buy that cave that he saw way back then when he was herding his sheep, that he smelled the beautiful sweet smell coming out of. And the people of the city try to convince Abraham that he doesn't need to buy the cave. They say to him, "You are a prophet of God. You're a holy man.
You are a prince of God in our midst. In the choicest of our burial places, bury your dead. Any of us will not withhold this burial place from you, from burying your dead.
Any one of us will be honored to open up our family cave, put your wife's body there for a year, close it off, like we've learned about in previous episodes.
Yeah.
That's how they buried in those days. After a year, you can collect the bones. You can put them in a nice box and file it in our cave. And whenever you go back to where you came from, to Haran or to Ur Kasdim, where your family tomb is, you'll carry your wife's bones back and put them in your family tomb." They're assuming that Abraham is a wandering holy man who has no intention to put down roots permanently. He's just following the voice of God wherever it leads him. And certainly he wants to bury in his family tomb. But they think that because his wife passed away and he's shocked, he's not thinking straight, and he's trying to buy, it's like someone's trying to buy a truck because they need to move a haul a load of bricks instead of borrowing someone's truck or renting it for the day, right? So they say, "Don't buy, we'll loan it to you." But Abraham insists. He says, "No, I want to buy, I want to buy, I want to buy." When they realize that he's insisting, they understand that he plans to put down roots here. Now everything changes. Now Ephron the Hittite says,
Land worth 400 silver shekels between me and you? What is it? Bury your dead.
Abraham hears that and he says, he named the price. Abraham counts out the 400 shekels and hands it to Ephron. And then the Torah says, and the field and the cave and everything around it was acquired by Abraham as a purchase in the eyes of the people of the city.
And Abraham weighed out to Ephron the price which he had mentioned in the hearing of the children of Heth, 400 silver shekels in negotiable currency.
How much is 400 shekel? In those days, 400 shekel was an exorbitant amount of money. We know this because if you go to the end of the book of Genesis, when Joseph reunites with his brothers, when he meets all his brothers, he gives them all gifts. And when he meets his favorite brother, Benjamin, he gives him extra gifts. And what's one of the extra gifts he gives him? 300 shekels. So one of the wealthiest people in the world wanted to show generosity to his favorite brother. He gave him 300 shekel. And to buy the cave, Abraham had to pay 400 shekel. So it gives you some context of how much that was in those days. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So all of this area down in the valley became the property of Abraham.
And afterwards, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, which is in Hebron, in the land of Canaan.
He didn't want to just take it as a gift. He wanted to buy it. So purchasing power, there's a contract. There's something more than just, oh, we were friends. Because you say, well, I gave you this gift. You might owe me something. It's like, I owe you nothing. This is mine. This is for my people from here on out.
Based on this, the rabbis say in the Talmud that there are 3 places that the nations of the world can never claim that the Jewish people took it by force or stole it. One is the field that Jacob bought in Shechem, where the tomb of Joseph is. The other is the Temple Mount, where the Dome of the Rock is today, that David purchased from the owner. And the third is the tomb of the Patriarchs in Hebron, that Abraham purchased. All 3 of these places, the Tanakh records the price that was paid, the contract that was made.
When it happened, who it was with.
And the irony is, these are
Oh,
3
yeah.
of the most highly contested places in the world today. Today, a Jew can't go to the tomb of Joseph. And a Jew can't enter into the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. Yeah. And the tomb of the Patriarchs is half off limits to Jews and half accessible.
Incredible.
What a day, huh?
Oh, yeah.
We saw where Abraham lived. We saw where he argued with God. We saw where he buried his wife Sarah and where he was buried, his children, his grandchildren. And there's so much to learn from Abraham and from the story. Ephraim, what did you learn today?
I learned that God doesn't just want to have servants. He wants to have a companionship with the Jews.
Wow.
And that there's no reason why Abraham should have any permission to not go against God, but challenge God.
To even push back at all, you're saying?
Yeah. Who are you to even question? But not only does God allow it, God
encourages it.
He accepts it, and Abraham was very respectful in his disagreement, but he kept on pushing and pushing and pushing, and God felt like, all right, no problem.
I would say that is the constant challenge of the people of Israel, is to find the right balance between being obedient to God. We have to always be obedient. We have to always, everything we do, it has to be for His sake, but also taking the initiative and moving God's agenda forward.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we've gone wrong with that in the past. We've been too ambitious, and sometimes God has been very happy with our ambition.
Yeah.
What do you think, Raphael?
Yeah, I think there's also this aspect of like our king and our father. So the king is basically we're his servants, and our father is basically we're a copy of him.
You're talking about the prayer that we say on Rosh Hashanah and during the 10 days of repentance. Avinu Malkeinu.
So
we address God as our Father, our King.
So we have this dual relationship, and Avinu comes first. We're sort of like first we want to be his children, and in a way his children is like a copy of God. And I think that's also maybe why Hashem wanted to let Abraham in on the plan of what these angels are going to do in Sodom, because if it's just a servant, I don't need to tell you what the whole thing is about. But if you're basically so akin to me in your midot, in your attributes, and in your charity and in your giving, and that you're so much of a copy of me, it's almost as though I sort of like am obliged to let you in on the whole plan.
Yeah.
Abraham is God actually refers to Abraham in the Torah, and he says, Asher hitalech lifanai, he went before me.
Right.
You would think God says he went after me, he followed me. God says he went before me. Bible starts with the story of Abraham at the age of 75. We know nothing about his childhood, his young manhood, or anything like that. But our Jewish tradition tells us that from the time Abraham was a little boy, he was already seeking God, and he contemplated and he came to an understanding of God on his own. The revelation that God revealed to him at the age of 75 was only after Abraham came to the greatest understanding humanly possible of God on his own, which is also a type of going before God, right?
Right. He was a seeker that searched everywhere for the meaning of the universe, and essentially he looked at the stars and he looked at the planets and he looked at all the different constellations, and at every stage he found that there was something higher and higher and higher until he got to that place which is the emanation that we aspire to, which is in a way the highest but at the same time all-encompassing. And it's that emanation which is not so to speak subjugated by anything else, and I think that correlates to what Abraham was doing in that story, which was that he wasn't only subjugated to the forces of the universe, he was actually directly correlated to the force which subjugates everything else. So I'm going to tell you, I want it to be like this as well, rather than, because I am connected intrinsically to that place which is above what connects, what directs everything else.
This was your first time coming here, right?
I was very, very excited. I didn't realize they were all here.
Tell us what was your feeling coming here for the first time?
It feels like you're coming, like, to the family reunion, but like it's almost like it's like the material manifestation of like the heavenly room with all the grandfathers and the grandmothers. They're just all in one room watching over their children, and here you have the physical expression of this, like spirit guides, making sure I'm going on the path that they instituted.
We are like the midgets on the shoulders of the giants who can see over the wall that the giants didn't see, the wall that's blocking the final redemption that's coming. And even though they didn't live to see it, we're going to live to see it, God willing, because we're a continuation of what they did. I hope it will be soon, God willing.
Amen.
Amen.